Welcome back to week 4 of the Charlotte and Lydia Quilt Along. If you need to catch up, you'll find links to all the previous videos in this quilt along in the video description. If you haven't started yet, I'd like you to join us. It would be fun to have you. All you need to do is sign up for the Charlotte Quilt Along newsletter, and there's a link below. When you sign up, I will send you links to the videos and also remind you of the deadline for entering for my giveaway. In addition, when you sign up for the Charlotte newsletter, you will get a code that you can use for a discount on the Charlotte pattern. So don't despair, it's not too late. This is a very fast quilt to make and fairly easy too. So hopefully you'll be able to catch up with us and then enter the giveaway. Now, this week, I'm going to talk about how to put the quilt together. The first thing you need to do is make your blocks and then press them well, and also make sure you have trimmed them to size or pressed or re-sewed as necessary to get them to be the right size. Then all you need to do to make Charlotte is to lay out your blocks in rows. There's a pink row at the top, and then a blue row, and then a yellow row, a pink, blue, and yellow. So lay out your blocks and then sew them together in rows. Now, last week we talked a little bit about pressing your blocks. And if you want, when you're pressing this center seam of your block, you can make it go this direction if you're pressing to the side, and then for the next row to the other direction, and then to the next row this direction. I pressed open. Likewise, the seams between each block, you can press to that same side if you're pressing to the side. So like the pink row, I could press to the left, and the blue row, I can press to the right, and the yellow row I can press to the left again. So as you're sewing your rows, decide how you want to press so that you can get nested seams if you're pressing to the side. If you're pressing open like me, doesn't really matter. You just press all of the seams open, and then you match them up as you join the rows together. After you have the quilt center made, after you've joined all your blocks into rows and sewn all the rows together, it's time to add the borders. Now, Charlotte has 3 borders. There's a small inner border, a larger outer border, and then another small third border. When I add borders to a quilt, this is what I do to prevent any kind of rippling. First, I like to add my side borders. So what I do is I measure the quilt center in several places from the top to the bottom. I measure down to see how long it actually is. And then I trim my 2 side borders to that average measurement. Then I pin at the ends and in the center, and then I pin in between all of those pins to gradually ease that border in. Since I've cut it to the average measurement, it may not be exactly what that side measurement is, but it will be the average of the quilt center, and that will help it lay flat. So add your 2 black or border 1 side borders first, then measure across the quilt in several places to get a measurement for cutting the top and bottom borders. Trim your top and bottom borders to that average measurement and sew them to the top and bottom for border 1. For border 2, you just simply repeat the process. So you're going to add your side borders first. So you're going to press, and you're going to, again, measure in a couple of places down the quilt center to figure out what to trim your 2 side borders to. Then you sew those on, And then you measure across a couple of times, come up with an average, sew the top and bottom borders of border 2 on. For the final border, you do the same thing. You measure down in a couple places, come up with an average, and cut your side borders to that average, sew them on, and then measure across in a couple of places, come up with an average, and sew your top and bottom borders on. Again, this will help prevent your quilt from rippling. If you just sew on borders and don't cut them to the size your quilt actually is, then you'll get kind of this weird rippling skewed effect. So you don't want to do that. As far as pressing your borders, I typically press towards the little skinny border here and press away from the larger border. That's my preference, but you can press your seams open or press all of your seams in one direction outward if that's what you want to do. Once you get everything, the borders on, it's time to move on to Lydia. Now, let's not forget Lydia. Lydia is created from those bonus half square triangles that we made when we made the blocks for Charlotte. So with Lydia, my first tip is to make sure that you have trimmed up your half square triangles to the size that it says they should be in the pattern. With all your half square triangles being the same size, lay them out according to the diagram in the pattern, and then sew them together in rows. Since they're all the same size, they should go together rather easily. Now, as you're sewing the blocks in each row, you can, just as you did with Charlotte, you can choose to press all of the ones in the first row to the right, and then the second row to the left, and the third row to the right. That will help you create nesting seams between the rows. Or you can press all of your seams open. It's up to you. There is a pinwheel in the very center of Charlotte, and if you are pressing to the side, I would recommend that you spin the seam there in the center in order to flatten that center, because there's going to be a lot of points coming, a lot of fabrics coming together in that center. And if you're not sure how to spin the seams, just check out my half square triangle videos. I will link to that here in the video description, but if you check it out, I show you how you twist to pop that center seam, and then you can flatten it and get the center seam to spin. And that helps that center be nice and flat there. To put the borders on Lydia, it's the same process as we followed for Charlotte. Notice that there's a larger border 1, a tiny, tiny, skinny little border 2, and then a larger border 3. So to put the borders on Lydia, again, you just, after you get your quilt center done and pressed, you measure down in a few places, come up with an average, cut the 2 border 1 strips to that size and sew them onto either side. Then you measure across, come up with an average, cut your border 1 strips to that average and sew them on the top and the bottom. Repeat the process for border 2 and border 3, and you'll have both quilt tops finished. Once you have your quilt tops finished, obviously, you'll want to either send it out to a long armor to have it quilted, or you'll want to quilt it yourself by layering with batting and backing and pin basting or spray basting, and then quilting it. So let's take a look at some ideas for how you might quilt your quilts. For Charlotte, I sent both of these out to a long armor because I needed to get them done quickly so I could get them to Island Boutique for the catalog photography. So I chose an all-over pattern for both. I think that complements the quilt. I don't know that there's any need for custom quilting on either one of these. For Charlotte, I used a large floral kind of motif with a swirl. So it swirls, and then there's a flower here, and it swirls back, and then it swirls over, and there's a flower. For Lydia, I did something completely different, and instead of going side to side, I went up and down with just a wavy pattern that I think complements there's a lot of spin to Lydia, so I thought the wavy pattern really complemented. Now, if I had more time, I could have easily quilted these myself. For Charlotte, something you could do is put on a walking foot and just quilt so far in from this diagonal, like maybe an inch all the way down, and then another inch all the way down. So just straight lines, and you could repeat that in the black area. And that would be a very simple way to finish Charlotte. For Lydia, if you want to do straight line quilting, you could do that because there's strong straight lines here that you could quilt like that if you felt like it. Or if you wanted to do free motion quilting, you could quilt from one point of the half square triangle to another point, then to another point, to another point, to another point. So you could do kind of a back and forth kind of movement, but using the pattern in the half square triangles to guide you, so without marking from one half square triangle to the next in simple loops. And that would be a very pretty way of finishing Lydia at home on your home sewing machine. I hope you've enjoyed the quilt along. And now that it's over, it's time to enter. So beginning today, you can enter a photo of your quilts or quilt tops for chances to win one of the prizes. There is a link below in the video description to my blog post, which describes basically what I've been talking about today, the different ways that you might quilt Charlotte and Lydia and how to put the quilt together, but also it has a link up where you can upload a photo. To recap, for the Quilt Along giveaway, you can enter a photo of Charlotte, and that's one chance to win. If you get Charlotte quilted, you can enter a photo of it quilted, and that counts as 2 chances to win. If you also go on to make Lydia, if you get a Lydia top, you can enter that photo, and that would be 1 chance to win. And if you get Lydia quilted, that's 2 chances. So all in all, if you get both of them made and quilted, you can have 4 chances to win. Now, what can you win? Well, as a reminder, the first prize is a lovely fat quarter pack from my flower pot collection. That is 20 fat quarters in what I think is a gorgeous collection. So that's a lovely prize. But in addition to that, you also get the patterns that I designed specifically for flower pot. So that includes star-crossed too, and also squared. So you get both of those patterns, and you already have Charlotte. And those were the 3 patterns I made for flower pots. So you get both of those patterns plus 20 fat quarters in a fat quarter collection. That's first prize. If you don't win first prize, well, you might win second prize. And second prize is a fat 8th collection from flower pot. So that would be 20 fat 8ths from my flower pot collection. In addition, you get your choice of one of the patterns that I designed for flower pot. So you could choose which one you want, whether you want squared or you want star-crossed too. For the third prize, if you don't win the first or second, you have a 3rd chance to win. And what I've done for the 3rd prize is, after making all of the quilts that I made with flower pot, I had a lot of scraps left over, so I've gathered those together, and they range in size from about 2 inches square to almost fat 8th size. And I will stuff as many of those scraps into a mailer as I can, and that will be your the third prize should you win. Now, I do need you to pay attention. The deadline for entering is January 15th. On the 16th, I will announce the winner. So make sure you're following along so that you know whether you have won or not, because you only have 2 days to let me know that you want to accept the prize. Because obviously, depending on what country you live in, there are implications in winning a prize, and you might have to pay taxes and stuff. So I can't assume, and I need to hear from you. And I need your postal address so I can ship it to you. If I don't hear from you in time, in other words, if I don't hear from you by 2 days, 48 hours after I make the announcement, I will have to choose somebody else. So please make sure that you follow me so you won't lose your prize. This ends the celebration for Flower Pot. However, I have my next collection with Island Batik coming out next year in January, February. So I hope that you will continue to follow me and receive my newsletter so that you can always keep in touch and know when the next quilt along will be, when the next big giveaways will be, and so that you can participate in that. Until then, I look forward to seeing your progress online, both of the quilts, and I wish you nothing but the best for the rest of this year, and good luck in my giveaway. I can't wait to see who wins, and also I can't wait to see the finished quilts. So until then, I will see you online. Bye.